Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and this is what month are we in now? Good grief. November book wrap up. Book and possibly other bits. If I finish a couple of other things, I'll add it in at the end, crafty things and deck things. But I'll have timestamps down below, so if there are no timestamps for those things, I didn't finish them. and then they'll be in next month's video. The first books I'm going to start with, because I have a lot of them this month, which is exciting, because I've been in a reading slump for a bit, well, from about 2020 to 2022, and just hadn't read as much as I wanted to, and of the kind of things that I wanted to. So I'm going to talk first about my language learning attempts. And I say attempts because I'm a very far thing from fluent. In French, I've been listening to the audiobook version of, well, I finished this one, Harry Potter et l'Ordre du Phénix. Excuse my pronunciation. And now I'm on the next one, the Prince de Sang-Mêlé, which is fun. So this, occasionally what I did was I'd read chapters while I was listening to it, which is how I like to learn, especially because my reading skills in French developed better than my listening skills. So I could read more advanced material than I could listen to and understand. So for the first few books, which I did a while back, listened to a while back, I would read and listen at the same time so that I could learn what all the words sounded like. And for this one, I did less of that, more of just walking around listening. Partly because for the first few books, I sort of had to read while I was listening because I could understand relatively little of what I was listening to, but I could understand it if I read it. And that was my predicament. So by the time I got to this book, I was starting to be able to understand more and more. And for the Prince de Sang-Mêlé, I haven't actually read any of it so far. I've just been listening to it, which is good for me because I tend to read more than not. So I'm getting to a place where I can start to listen to like TV shows or the news or whatever in French and follow it. Like, I still miss a lot of words, and I still miss sometimes some context or subtext or idioms or sarcasm or things like that that are more difficult, but I can follow the story. So that's very exciting. So that's that. So clearly these are my language learning books. So what I've been doing for Arabic is I found, thanks to, I think his channel is called Words and Days. I'll link that down below too. He's a language learning channel. He's an English speaker, but he's learned Swedish to quite a fluent level, and now he's learning Spanish. And he introduced me in one of his videos to Storytel, which is another audiobook source. And they have audiobooks for Harry Potter in Arabic, which is amazing. Because I've sort of been stalled in Arabic for a while. Like, I keep trying and I keep trying and I keep never getting anywhere. So, and as you can see, well, as maybe you can't see because you don't know what my level is in Arabic, which is very beginner still. But it's been very beginner for a long time, like an embarrassing long time. It's ridiculous and it's getting frustrating. So I'm trying a new approach, because if I just look at this page, I can't read it. I mean, I can sound out the words one at a time, like you do, when you're learning to read in elementary school. I can do that, and I can pick up the odd word, but I don't really know, I can't really follow anything, pardon me, in Arabic. So what I've been doing is listening to it in Arabic, but reading it in English, which sounds weird because it is a tiny bit weird, but it's sort of like watching a movie in Arabic with English subtitles, I find, where, because my English reading level is so fast, I can read these books in no time at all. So basically what I do is I don't even really have to pause the Arabic very often. I'll just sort of skim one paragraph in English at a time and then listen to the Arabic and see what I can pull out. So what, if I can hear Dursley because it's Dursley in Arabic, it's the same. So if I can find what Mr. and Mrs. is, and if I know the number 4, if I can figure out what number is, you know, things like that. And so in this case, I probably could find the word for the past tense, but proud to say I probably know the word for say. No, is that eat or say? I can't remember. If I heard it again, I'd know. But I have such bad recall. My memory is frustrating. Anyway, and then thank you. Thank you very much. That I know in Arabic. So then it becomes a matter of trying to figure out what the rest of the sentence is, as in listening to it. And so that's been kind of fun, actually. It's been a little bit like a puzzle, sort of, but a linguistic puzzle, where, because I know these stories so well, so I've read them 3 times in English, long time ago. This is my 3rd time in French. So the first 2 times were just reading through it, and then this time with the audiobook is my 3rd time. And this will be my 1st time with the Arabic-English combo. And what I'm finding is that I think I'm actually learning some words, which is amazing, because I can pick out the odd word, but I'm starting as I'm going, because I'm about 2/3 through, I'm starting to pick out a few more words, I think, now and again. So this is, so far, it's a very short-lived experiment, but I'll keep going through the series and see how I go, because I know with French, even though I read the books the first time when it was well above my reading level. So in language learning, there's this idea of comprehensible input, where you're supposed to read or listen to things that you can understand like 90% of or something like that. But I find that ridiculously hard to find, and when I do find it, it's boring, and I don't like it, so I don't use it, so I don't learn things. So it doesn't really work for me. However, the first time I read through Harry Potter in French, it was well above my reading level at that time. It's not anymore. It's above my listening level still, a little bit. I'm getting better at that, but it was so far above my reading level that I needed to read. I had the English and the French books side by side, so I could read, or try to read, a French sentence and then look it up in English and see what it actually meant and what I'd missed. And that worked really well. I mean, by the 4th book, you know, because they're massive, it gets a bit cumbersome, but it worked. And it worked actually impressively well. And so that by the time I got through the 7th book for the first time, by the end of it, I could kind of read it. I'd surprised myself. I wasn't sure what to expect. And so the second time through, I just used the French books, and I still missed a lot. And I still miss a bit, but not as much as I used to. Like I can, excuse me, I catch most of it. There are still definitely words I don't know, but I'm getting there. So I'm trying to do something similar with Arabic here. So this will be the 7th time through the books. So I know them really well. So it's very easy for me to skim a paragraph really quickly in English and then just listen to it in Arabic and try and puzzle out what any given sentence means. And the word order is very different. Well, very different, often different. So it's a bit trickier in that regard than French. But yeah, so far so good. It's fun. It's a strange adventure, but this seems to be my language learning series. If I ever get to Farsi or Turkish, I'll have to get the Harry Potter books in those languages too, if I can find them for like less than $1,000, because they're expensive on the internet. Anyway, those are my books that I haven't quite finished these. I finished this one, but that was my language learning adventure for this month, and that was partly why I got so little else done, because that's all I did like the last 2 weekends. Okay, before I get into Gothlit November, there are a few other books that I read. So I finally finished Baba's Kitchen Medicines, which is folk remedies of Ukrainian settlers in Western Canada. And it's okay. It's not amazing. It's not a, captivating book or anything, I wouldn't say. But it's pretty interesting. It's an interesting historical record to have. I'm glad I have it as sort of a reference book. Obviously some of the things I wouldn't use anymore, but that holds true for most herbal books. But it has a good sort of compendium of what people used for what. And I have, some of my ancestry is not exactly Ukrainian, but Mennonite, sort of Ukrainian. Wandered all over Europe for 400 years. So in that sense, Ukrainian. It's a bit complicated. Anyway, it was interesting to listen to for that reason. And interesting to learn about some of the reasons why they would or wouldn't use certain medicines or herbal remedies. And yeah, so that was a pretty good one. One that I liked better, well, okay, this one I liked pretty well. This is Sacred Instructions, Indigenous Wisdom for Living Spirit-Based Change. One I liked amazingly well was You Are the Medicine by Asha Frost. So these are both Indigenous authors. She, I think, is Anishinaabe, Asha Frost. And they both, she's Micmac, I think. Sherry Mitchell. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering that, but I think she is. Anyway, the point of these books is to take a look at our relationship to the land, which is abysmal at the moment, and try to heal that and to start to enter into a healthier relationship with ourselves, with each other, with the land, all of that. So this book, I mean, Sacred Instructions had some kind of weird new agey bits that I didn't really know what to do with, but on the whole it was really lovely. Talks a lot about like sort of the internal path that you take, dealing with trauma, of course, dealing with all sorts of things, decolonizing, and what activism might look like now, and what moving forward in a different relationship with the land might look like now. So that was good. And this was also, I really liked this one. This went through the 13 moons, so the 13 Anishinaabe months of the year, which are these ones. I won't read them out because I don't speak Anishinaabe Moon. But basically for each moon, so here's one, the spirit moon. She talks about roughly what it is, a legend about it, or folklore, or whatever. An animal spirit, not a spirit animal. She does talk about how non-Indigenous people can engage in this sort of connecting with animals and plants and things respectfully. Messages from the animals, and then what you might do, so meditations and things, and how you can behave going forward, different steps you can take. Here's the sort of meditation at the end. So it's really interesting. She talks a lot about how she healed herself, for her children, and it goes through a whole bunch of different sections like that for each moon, for each month. So that was pretty cool. All right, are we getting into the Gothlit November yet? Kind of. Okay, so I'll start with a couple of books that are Gothlit adjacent, which are this one, which is really just bizarre horror. I don't know, it's weird. It's a very weird book. It's Alice by Christina Henry, and I think I heard about it first on Lisa Pavis's channel, of all places. It's weird. It's weird, but it's inspired by Lewis Carroll, so what do you expect? Weird, I think, is what you should expect. And it's a bit gory, which is not usually my thing, but it was such an interesting take on the Alice story that I got the second one, which I think is called Red Queen, but I got it out from the library, so I'll read that next month. And then I finally finished a book I'd started months ago, which is Venko by Cherie Des Moines. And this is a sort of witchy story, so you know, it suits this time of year. But it's Cherie is a Métis author who is so good. I mean, if you've never read Empire of Wild or The Marrow Thieves, you really should, because she's incredible. Her imagination is extraordinary and her writing is very good, and I love it. And so this was a super fun book that I started a long time ago, and then just sort of life happened and I got sidetracked. Not because it wasn't good, just because things happened. And then other things took priority, but it's a super good book about a young Métis girl who, well, like young woman, late teens, early 20s, something like that, who's having some, a hard time in life, and then ends up, I won't explain to you how, on this bizarre sort of road trip through a little bit of Canada, but mostly the US. And there's a witch hunter that's, this coven of women have to defend against, and it's a little bit bizarre, but as you could probably tell from Alice, I'm okay with bizarre. Bizarre is fine. But it's a lot of fun. It's a wild ride, and I enjoyed that one. I think it might be available as an audiobook now, I'm not sure. But yeah, super entertaining. Okay, so now sort of the goth-lit-ish stuff. This isn't quite, but this is, I think, considered goth-lit. So these are two books by Yrsa Sigurðardóttir, who always writes, she writes what sometimes has been called Nordic noir, or excuse me, I think I've got allergies today. Very eerie, atmospheric. Very occasionally her books will be a bit gory, but usually they're more eerie and atmospheric, as I already said, so now I'm being redundant. But anyway, I really enjoy that sort of setting in a book. And so I've read both of these this month. This one, I Remember You, a ghost story, I had to stop reading for about 6 months because it was too creepy. And I don't usually read like creepy, like outright creepy books. And this one is very creepy. I had to put it down for a while. This one kind of is. It involves kids. So if you don't like books that involve things happening to kids or kids witnessing crimes or things, this is not going to be the one for you. But it's captivating. This actually also involves kids. Just by coincidence, because they're not connected at all. This is part of a series, The Doll. Anyway, yeah, those are my two Yrsa Sigurðardóttir ones. If you like your Scandinavian crime fiction and want to read an Icelandic author who is really good, I like her a lot. Okay, so next are a couple of modern Gothic books that I read. I read Mexican Gothic, which, well, I listened to this. And then just got it for the library because that was easier. It's an odd one, but it's really good. Like the main character, Noemi, is fascinating. I really like her. And the situation she finds herself in with this house is bizarre, and I didn't see the ending coming. I didn't see how do I put this without giving anything away? The reason that the creepy things happen, didn't see that coming. And so it is also atmospheric, but in a different way. It's set in Mexico, so it's a totally different environment to some of the traditional European Gothic sort of settings. But it's really, the atmosphere is oppressive in a different sort of way, but it's a really good book, and I'm very glad I read it. And I might have to read other books of hers, I'm not sure yet. But I think I might have to. So that's Mexican Gothic. and Moon of the Training Leaves by Webgeshig Rice, which is very different. This is a sequel to Moon of the Crested Snow, which is also incredible. And I think he wasn't going to write a sequel originally, and then so many people on the book tour asked him about a sequel that he was like, well, maybe I'll write a sequel. So now everybody wants a third book, because really, they're both exceptional. They're so well written. And so this story picks up after the first one. Do you need to have read the first one? I don't think you do, because it's different characters, like a different generation of characters. But if you're curious how they ended up in this dystopian setting, then the first book would be helpful. But basically this picks up in like mid-dystopian setting. And they're surviving. They're surviving in the bush after all the power goes out. And has been out for like 10 years or something like that. Anyway, and they go on a sort of on-foot road trip with a few of them to try and find the land that they used to live on, being Anishinaabe. And it's really good. It's the people they encounter along the way. Like, the characters are all really well written. The story is captivating. I didn't find it quite as sort of eerie atmospheric as the first one, but the atmosphere is like I don't know really know how to explain it, but you're totally submersed in this forest landscape. It's fascinating. So yeah, definitely love these books. So he could write a third one tomorrow and I'd pre-order it. So that's that. And then if I read enough, I might tag on another book or two, because I'm filming just before the end of the month because I have time and energy today. I might tack on a couple more at the end of this, but otherwise these would be the last two, I think. So I read Carmilla and I read The Woman in White, and these are more Victorian? Gothic? Is that the category they fall into? Oh, now I fell into. Now I've forgotten. Good. Okay, I think that's the category they fell into. So Sheridan Le Fanu is an Irish author who I'd never heard of before, but I'd heard of the book because it's described as a lesbian vampire Gothic novel, which I was like, sure, that sounds fun, why not? And it is fun. It's really good. It's very short, so it's easy to get through in a hurry. And it does move along at quite a pace. And I think it was written before Dracula and may have influenced Dracula. I'm trying to do this without glare here. It's a bit of a challenge, but hopefully that works, sort of. Anyway, it centers around a young woman who meets another young woman who turns out to be a vampire, but that's not really giving anything away because you sort of know that from the beginning, except she doesn't know that from the beginning. The girl who is not a vampire, I mean. So it's sort of a story of how this vampire woman is discovered and the relationship between the two of them. And it's a bit occasionally erotic-ish, I mean, for the times. And yeah, it's a good one. I liked it. I wouldn't say, it was the most amazing thing I'd ever read or anything, but it was super fun. Very short and easy to read, and I'm glad I read it. And then The Woman in White was a book that I started reading years ago and gave up on. And the reason I gave up on it is because, okay, so there are three main characters. There's the male narrator, whose name I've gone and forgotten now, because he's really that memorable. Seriously. I'm not even kidding. He's the reason honestly. Okay, so Walter. Walter is a very boring character. which is a good part of the reason I didn't get very far into this book the first time I tried to read it, despite the fact, as you can see, it's not really a very big book. The other two main characters are Laura and Marion. So Laura and Marion are sisters. Walter goes to teach them drawing. He falls in love with Laura, and then, you know, chaos ensues. Gothic style chaos. And so the plot of the story is quite interesting. It's quite fun, and apparently not unrealistic given what men could actually do in terms of having their wives locked away in asylums at the time. That's actually a thing that happened to more than one woman. So that disturbing historical footnote aside, Walter, Laura, Marion. They're the three main characters. Walter is pathetic and forgettable. Laura is the stereotypical, I am so delicate, I may faint, female Victorian character that I cannot stand. Oh, goodness. So if there was just the two of them, I would not have finished this again. The only reason I finished it was because I made it as far as Marion's section of the book. Marion is a phenomenal character. If it was plausible at the time for women to be able to do some of the things that men could do in terms of just having agency to, like, go out of the house and find out things, investigate things for themselves, she should have been the main character of the book and just told the whole story herself, with asides from other people perhaps. But so different sections are told by different people, and the first section and the last section are told by Walter. And honestly, Marion is the only reason. She's a phenomenal character. She was so interesting and so well developed, and I loved her. And if there was a whole book about her, I would read it. And if this book had been about her, I would have loved it more. And unfortunately, at the time, I do realize that it wasn't really plausible for her to, like, leave the house that she lived in and go and investigate some of the things that Walter could go out and do. Which is unfortunate, because it would have been so much better if she could have, if the last section of the book could have been written from her perspective. Because honestly, he's just, he's so dull and not always very bright, and just kind of, I don't know, he's just a bit boring. So this middle section here is the story told by Miriam Holcomb. And yeah, she's the only reason I kept reading it, and I kept hoping it would come back to her, and it never did. I mean, she features as a key role in the last section by Walter, which is good, because otherwise I may have given up again and just read it for her part in the middle. Honestly, as you can see, I don't have a very high opinion of this Walter Hartright character, or Marion's sister Laura, who she loves dearly, apparently, but the two of them are just, they deserve each other. Yeah, anyway, I'll stop with that. Marion is fantastic. Definitely would recommend reading this just for her, if you can stand to make it as far as her entrance. Oh, and one more book that I'll insert a clip of, but I also listened to Botanical Folktales of Britain and Ireland, and that was fun. It seemed to be mostly Britain, which was okay, but there were some Irish ones in there too. And I do have ancestry in both Britain and Ireland. So I'm always curious about folklore, especially to do with plants. So it was fun to read these they're sort of like fairy tales, but instead of Grimm's fairy tales, they're the fairy tales of the British Isles, which you hear less about for some reason. I don't know why, but you do. So it was a lot of fun to read them, and I'm glad I did. Hey, so I finished more books, which is very exciting. And I finished a couple of them on December 1st, but I'm counting it as November because I have a small apartment and need to put things away. So that's how that works. I finished Jamaica Inn. I liked it. I didn't like it as much as I'd liked other books by her, like Rebecca and the Birds. I thought those were better. But this was fun. It was, the ending I found a bit implausible. Although, to be fair, it's not as though Gothic romances are known for their, you know, sense of realism. So it's a little, it tends towards the melodramatic, this one. but it was fun to read. I'm glad I read it. Probably will never read it again. This one was a reread. I had read Frankenstein before, a long time ago, and could only vaguely recall what it was about. So it was nice to reread this. It is an older style of English, so if that's not your thing, this might not be quite for you. This is definitely more modern. The language, I mean. And this is very much not. But it's a really interesting book, and I like the explorations of it. And I think, I mean, I sympathized towards the creature, at least in the beginning, the first time I read it. And I did this time as well. I think this time I felt even less sympathy towards Frankenstein. And what's his name? Walton? The guy on the ship. The captain of the ship, Walton, I think is his name. They're both very quick to judge based on appearances. And in the case of Frankenstein, he's quick to judge based on appearance of a creature that he made, which is, you know, as life choices go, he could have made better ones. But it's a really good book. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's, I mean, it's inspired a lot of stories since, and obviously has been retold many times before, so yeah, that's that one. And then I didn't read this whole book, which, you know, was never the plan, because it's massive, and I may never read the whole book, because some of these essays and things at the end I'm just not so interested in. But I did read, I didn't read Kubla Khan, although I may. Speaking of which, since it's open to that page, I should probably read that. But I did read Christabel, which was a really cool poem. It's an unfinished poem. So it was supposed to have more parts. It only had 2 parts. And from what I've read and understand about it, Coleridge wasn't sure that it worked as a story, as a poem. I liked it. I liked the way the rhythm was used, the pacing, and I liked the strangeness of it. The things happening that at first you're not sure if they're real, and then you realize they're not. Well, they might be, but maybe they're just a dream, but maybe they're not. Maybe something strange is actually going on. And of course, because it's unfinished, you never really find out what that might be. But it's quite an interesting poem with some interesting, the 2 female characters in it, Christabel and Georgeline, something like that, are really interesting. I like them. So that's the end of my Gothlit November selection. And then I did finish this one, which I know I talked about at the beginning of the video. So I'm on to the second book, The Chamber of Secrets, in Arabic. And I still don't understand most of it, but I feel like I'm catching maybe more words in the second book, listening to the audiobook, than I did with the first one. So that's exciting. And I'm this close to finishing the audiobook for the Song Malay. I need to practice my pronunciation. So I'm counting that for this month, because I think I've got probably like that much to go, and I'll probably finish it today, and then it can just go back on my shelf. So that's the books for the month. What else did I do this month? I didn't really do any tarot-y things. I didn't really do much in the way of herbalism things. I did make a quilt, which, I mean, I started this quilt. It's just squares, so it's nothing fancy, and then the X's through them. I made the quilt top and quilted the layers all together like 3 years ago. And then it sat in a corner of my living room for 3 years, and I didn't do anything. And then this month, I finally attached the binding onto it. and then hand sewed it on the back, which I think I did, you know, an alright job at for the first time. And I enjoyed the hand sewing process, so I may keep doing more of that, but it's taken, ooh, I should fix that. Ignore that, the backing issues and the bits of fluff all over the place because it was sitting out without the binding for several years, so fluff has escaped. And also it was in a messy pile, so it's a bit crinkly, but hey, it's a quilt, so who cares? Yeah, this is now my my couch blanket for like TV watching and reading and whatnot. It's a lot of fun. I love it. And then the only other thing I really had time to do this month with all those books is I started writing, and I'm not very good at it yet, but I started writing a machine learning program. So I made my first neural network. I mean, I used TensorFlow to do it. So it's not like I did any of the mathematics or complex programming myself. But it is incredible what you can teach yourself between YouTube and ChatGPT. It's really amazing. So anyway, that was exciting because I made a program that actually does learn. It only learns one thing and it doesn't learn it very well, but it learns. So that's exciting. So maybe next month, if I have time, or this month now, it's technically December as I'm finishing this, I'll have time to work on improving that. We shall see. Anyway, that's all I've got for the month. Mostly books, but no complaints out of me because I had a reading slump for quite some time. So it's nice to feel like I'm back in the reading swing of things and a little bit back into the crafty swing of things. So there may be a bit more of both of those things in the coming months in my apartment, and I'm enjoying that. So anyway, that's November done. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.